Last game of the year. Can't hold anything back now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into Locked On Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, December 27th, and I hope you enjoyed a very Merry Christmas with your friends and family. And I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So if you didn't recognize my cold open, that is from the movie Waterboy, and specifically Brent Musburger's call for the Bourbon Bowl in that movie. If you've seen it, you know that was a really weird game, and I'm kind of expecting something similar in the Sun Bowl, which is coming up here in just a few days. And look, I'm going to be honest, I'm just excited that we get to talk about an actual football game. It feels like it's really been a while, hasn't it? The Irish are currently in El Paso to take on the Oregon State Beavers in the Sun Bowl. And even though this is definitely going to be a weird one, given all the opt-outs and everything, and just the way that bowl games are treated nowadays in modern college football, I'm still really looking forward to it. I think the Irish have plenty at stake in this one. So let's get right into it. Here's what you need to know. The game will kick off Friday, December 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern. It'll be noon local time in Sun Bowl Stadium. And the game is going to be aired on CBS with the SEC on CBS crew. So Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson will be on the call. And I got to imagine, I just want to know how they feel about this game, going from calling the SEC championship between Alabama and Georgia in what was one of the best college football games of this season, and then going from that and the emotional sign-off because it's the last SEC on CBS game, and then going to the Sun Bowl to commentate Notre Dame and Oregon State with all the opt-outs and all that stuff. It's really funny, and I just think it adds another layer to what is going to be a really interesting football game. Right now, Notre Dame is favored by 6.5, and the over-under is 41.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. So the experts in the desert, a little bit further out west in Las Vegas, they're predicting Notre Dame to win by a final score close to 24-17. But that 41.5, man, that's a low total, and honestly, it makes sense given the fact that Oregon State is going to be playing their third-string quarterback, and then Notre Dame will have Steve Angeli make his first start in his career, amongst many others as well. So what's at stake for Notre Dame in this game? Because some people are they are just tired of bowl games. To me, those people just aren't college football fans, because before I started recording this, I was watching the Tulane game and I was loving it, right? I love these weird bowl games. Give me all of it. And if you want to go in the comments and just say, who cares, meaningless game, that's cool. You don't like college football, I do, all right? So I think there is a lot at stake for Notre Dame in this game, and I think it's important for the present and the future of the program. The future aspect of it is kind of obvious, right, with all the guys making their first starts or seeing significant playing time. But I want to talk about what this game means to the 2023 season first, and specifically Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman really needs to get this 10th win. It's not going to make or break his career or anything like that, and all 10-win seasons are not the same. I think it's obviously better if you win 10 regular season games, and if you lose that third game, it's hopefully to a really good team and a good bowl game. Not the case here. Notre Dame won 9 regular season games, but still, winning 10 games shows tangible growth from year one of his head coaching career to year two, because last year Notre Dame finished the season 9-4. They got that 9th win in the Gator Bowl against South Carolina, and I think it's really important to improve on the record year to year. Even if there are plenty of signs that Notre Dame is on the upward trajectory, having the same record in the first and second year, it doesn't feel right. Plus, you got to look at the fact that Notre Dame is 1-3 against teams currently ranked in the CFP top 25. Their lone win was against NC State, who is now ranked number 18th. Oregon State is ranked 19th. So even with all the opt-outs, this is still a good football team. It's a ranked football team. And if Notre Dame finishes 9-4 with a 1-4 record against ranked teams, that's really discouraging, to be honest. So I think it's, in a way, it's more important that Notre Dame doesn't lose, right? Like a win would be nice, but the reaction and the emotional buy-in to a win in this game isn't going to be nearly the same as what it would be in terms of like the negative reaction if Notre Dame were to lose this game. It would be negative towards the team and specifically to Marcus Freeman because Oregon State doesn't even really have a coach. Their head coach, Jonathan Smith, took the job at Michigan State, and now their interim coach, Trent Bray, isn't even coaching this game. It's a really weird deal. I'll get into it more in the Oregon State scouting report, but it's really strange. They've got their wide receivers coach, who's the head coach in this one. I don't really get it, but either way, Marcus Freeman cannot afford to lose to their wide receivers coach in this game, and I can tell from his comments about this game, really from the moment that it was announced, that he really, really cares about getting a win in this one, and he should because there's a lot at stake for him. As for the future, and specifically next season, this is a great opportunity for some of the young guys to see significant playing time. So let's go through all of the guys on Notre Dame who have either opted out of this game to, I guess, get a head start on their NFL draft preparation, or if they entered their name in the transfer portal. So quarterback Sam Hartman, Audric Estime, Tobias Merriweather, Rico Flores, Chris Tyree, Holden Stays, Joe Alt, Zeke Correll, Blake Fisher, Nana Osafo-Mensah, Maris Leofau, Cam Hart, and Thomas Harper are the starters or key contributors, the guys right off the bench who will not be playing in this game. Notre Dame is also going to be without a couple reserves, including Ramon Henderson, Braylon James, Antonio Carter, Ryan Barnes, Michael Carmody, and Aiden Kayanina. So there's a lot of guys who are going to be getting their first ever start, most notably quarterback Steve Angeli. But he's not the only player that have a lot to gain from playing in this game. As for Angeli, this is going to be his first time playing when it's not garbage time. And I know that a lot of people started to fall in love with Steve Angeli when he'd come in and he'd play against Tennessee State or, kind of dice up Pitt a little bit. But this is going to be his first time running the offense for a full 60 minutes. And I don't really think that there's anything in this game that he can do that's going to change the way that the staff looks at next season. I mean, unless he goes for like 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, but I don't think that's going to happen. I expect Notre Dame to keep things simple for him. They're going to try to keep him in advantageous situations and not really have to make him throw the ball deep unless Notre Dame gets down early. But there's a couple other guys, too, that I think have great opportunities. At running back, Jeremiah Love / Jadarian Price. They're both going to see a lot more carries in this one than they have in any game so far this season. And Notre Dame doesn't really know who's going to be running back number 1 next year without Audric Estime. And I think this game could go a long way in determining that. It seems like Jeremiah Love is going to get the bulk of the carries. He's the first name listed on the depth chart, but I do expect Jadarian Price to have a big role in this one as well. And then there's no bigger player in this one, at least on the Notre Dame side, than Charles Jagasaw. He is the true freshman who will be making his first start and really seeing his first significant playing time at all in his college career as the starting left tackle in this one to replace Joe Alt. It came as a big surprise to a lot of us once it was announced that he was going to be the starting left tackle. Pretty much everyone assumed that it'd be Tosh Baker. Instead, Tosh Baker is going to be starting at right tackle, and Emil Wagner is going to be right behind him over here. So it looks like they're just giving Charles Jagasaw the job. Does he have what it takes to be the starting left tackle at Notre Dame going into next season? That's going to be a big question mark around this game because Notre Dame, I believe, is still in the market for an offensive lineman, specifically a tackle in the transfer portal. But if Charles Jagasaw is able to come in and have a big game in this one, maybe Notre Dame feels a little bit more comfortable letting him start next season as a redshirt freshman. Again, really tall task, but then again, Joe Alt really broke out as a sophomore too. So even though it's not what we've kind of become accustomed to with Notre Dame offensive linemen, usually they have to sit behind some veteran guys for a couple of years before they really make their mark around their junior year. Maybe Charles Jagasaw is just ready to go right away, which would be really impressive for him. Then on defense, you've got Jalen Sneed, who's going to be playing linebacker in this one. I don't know if he's going to be playing a more traditional linebacker without Maris Leofau. Is he going to be playing the will? Or is he still going to be a package player, much like he has been for most of the season? It seems like Jack Kaiser is going to get the start at will, but then again, we could still see a lot more of Jalen Sneed in the bowl game. I remember last year in the Gator Bowl, Sneed saw a lot more time, and I think part of that is just to keep the player satisfied, keep them motivated, give them more opportunities so that they stick around. But Jalen Sneed came in as a 5-star prospect. It hasn't really worked out so far in the sense of what he was as a recruit. He's still been a productive player in spots, especially rushing the passer, but maybe we'll see him in a more advanced role in this game. And then lastly, I've got Shane Mickey / Christian Gray at quarterback. Similar to the running backs, we don't know who is going to start opposite of Benjamin Morrison next season at corner. So that starting job is up for grabs. I don't think it's going to be won by Christian Gray or Jaden Mickey on Saturday, but I do think that their performance is going to go a long way in determining who has the head start on that job going into spring practice. The staff really seems to love Jaden Mickey. I'm more of a Christian Gray guy myself. I think he has a brighter future now. I just think he's a better all-around player at Notre Dame, but Jaden Mickey is a year older. He has a little bit more experience. I think he's going to get the first shot in this one, but I do expect to see a lot of Christian Gray, especially considering Thomas Harper is going to be out at nickel, so we could see both of them on the field at the same time. Either way, great opportunity for these guys. They can really make their mark, even though it's not going to be starters on both ends. There's going to be a lot of guys at Notre Dame who we're going to be talking about all offseason long, and this performance is what we're going to have to really base off. Like, I'm sure that Notre Dame isn't going to go into next season and be like, okay, well, Christian Gray has played a lot better than Jaden Mickey throughout spring ball and throughout the summer. But then again, Mickey did have that bowl game. Now, I don't think it's going to be like that, but I do think that this game is very important to these guys and the momentum they'll have going into the practice, and it'll set them up for next season. All right, who's going to show up in the Sun Bowl wearing orange and black? That's coming up next. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. For my pick this week, I'm sticking with Thursday Night Football, and I'm going to take my Cleveland Browns to cover -7.5 going up against the New York Jets. The Browns are hot right now with Joe Flacco leading the way. It's one of the most improbable stories in the NFL this season, considering how many injuries the Browns have had to deal with, the fact that they're still winning, and they're still in the hunt for the 1 seed in the AFC. It's really crazy. It's also like the most anti-Browns thing ever to have so many things sort of work out, despite how many things weren't working out early on in the season. Plus, the New York Jets are absolutely terrible. So even though people are all in on the Browns right now, and usually that's a sign that things are going to go haywire, I actually think the Browns are going to cover. So give me the Browns to cover -7.5 on Thursday Night Football. We're sticking with Thursday Night Football. We will right this train one way or another. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you to please like the video below and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please hit that subscribe button, or if you're a Spotify person like myself, you can follow the show there as well. They do things a little bit different at Spotify. They don't call it subscribe, so I'm going to change it up. They say follow. All right, now let's look at what Oregon State brings to the table, and it's obviously going to be a little bit different. It's hard to know what to expect from this team considering the opt-outs that they've had, but they're 8-4 on the year. This has been a good football team. They started out really hot. They were 6-1 with their only loss to Washington State after the first 7 games, and then they sort of limped to the finish line because they lost 3 of their last 5. They did suffer close losses to Arizona and Washington, which, those are 2 good football teams, and they were in it until the very end in both those games. But then Oregon State got absolutely housed by their arch rival Oregon in the final game of the regular season. That was a weird game because, literally an hour before kickoff, Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic went on TV in the pregame show and said that Jonathan Smith was already finalizing a deal to become the next head coach at Michigan State. And if she's saying that on TV, I'm sure that news had already made its way into the Oregon State locker room before that game even happened. So you have to wonder how it affected the player's psyche going into that matchup. And then, they got absolutely rolled, which is not something you see very often in intense rivalry games in college football, especially not that one. Hell, Oregon State even upset Oregon the year prior. Didn't happen in their last game. So they don't have a ton of momentum going into this one. They don't have a head coach. They don't even really know what their schedule is going to be like next year, given all the conference realignment, the fact that the Pac-12 is just disappearing, and Oregon State was one of the last schools remaining there with Washington State as well. So I don't really know what to expect from them. I don't know how bought in they're going to be to this game, but I want to go over the guys who aren't going to be playing, and then we'll get into some guys who you should keep an eye out for, who've been solid contributors for the Beavers this season, and then we'll move on to the predictions. But let's start with who's not going to be playing for the Beavers on Saturday. Quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, you might remember him from his time at Clemson. He really revitalized his career in his lone season with the Beavers. He's still not a great passer, but he's still a really effective runner. He's such a big dude, especially in short yardage situations. He was basically automatic, but he's not going to be playing in this one. He's in the transfer portal. Same as their backup quarterback, young dude, Aiden Chiles, very highly touted prospect. He followed Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. He's already transferred there. And then they will also be without their starting running back, Damian Martinez. He is actually not an opt-out, or at least not one that he chose to do. He was suspended for a DUI arrest, so he will not be playing in this one. They'll be without their starting wide receiver, Anthony Gold. He's tied for the team lead in receiving yards, as well as their tight ends, Jack Velling, who's second team All-Pac-12, and Jake Overman. And then on the line of scrimmage, they're going to be without 3 of their 5 starters, although 2 of them are due to injury at left guard and left tackle, so they have to replace their entire left side of the offensive line. But their best offensive lineman, Talisa Fuaga, he was a second-team All-American. He is not going to be playing in this one as well. I don't really know if I should even go over the stats for what they did this season because most of those guys aren't even playing, so I won't. I'm just going to go over some guys to know. Their quarterback is going to be Ben Gulbranson. He is their third-string quarterback, but he actually does have a little bit of experience playing for Oregon State. He started 8 games in 2022 and actually led them to a win in their bowl game over Florida in the Las Vegas Bowl last year. He went 12 of 19 for 165 yards passing with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown in that one. They smoked Florida in that one. That was an interesting game. He has thrown 1 pass this season, though, so he might be a little rusty. He's not a dual-threat quarterback by any means, but both of the guys in front of him were, so maybe they're going to have to modify the offense a little bit to cater to him. He had 9 touchdowns to 5 interceptions last season, only a 62% completion percentage. So he's not a great quarterback. He's a third-string guy, but again, he's the more experienced one if you compare him to Steve Angeli. The running back, I imagine Deshaun Fenwick, he's number 1. He's going to be getting the bulk of the carries. He's a 6-year guy. He's a big dude, 6'2", 222 pounds. He had 500 rushing yards this season on 90 carries, so that averages out to 5.6 yards per carry. He did have 5 touchdowns, and he's a really difficult guy to bring down. Of his 500 rushing yards, 335 of those came after contact, according to Pro Football Focus. So it's imperative that Notre Dame is able to bring him down, especially if they get their hands on him and in the backfield. Because if they don't bring him, he can break the first tackle and really make something out of nothing. At wide receiver, keep an eye out for Silas Bolden. He's number 7. He's a little dude, man. He's 5'8", 157 pounds. That's about how big I was in high school, and I was an undersized high school player. Although I'm guessing, considering Silas Bolden is playing Division I Power 5 football, he probably is a little bit faster than I was. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see. Maybe we'll have to race after this game. But he's been a really effective receiver so far this season. He had 51 catches, 718 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He had 11 receptions of 20 or more yards, so he's a really explosive guy. He had 248 yards after the catch, so something to keep an eye out for. If they try to get him the ball in the horizontal pass game, Notre Dame's corners are going to have the tough task of bringing him down, but they need to do it, or else he can break off a big play at any time. As I mentioned earlier, they have to replace 3 starters in their offensive line, so I think Notre Dame can and will dominate the line of scrimmage. Notre Dame returns all of their starters on the defensive line in this one, so they definitely have the advantage there. And when I look at this offense, the only real threat I see is the potential for some big plays. I really don't expect this offense to have much success going up against the Notre Dame defense, but defensively, Oregon State is pretty solid. If you were to compare the number of opt-outs, they're in a little bit better shape on defense compared to offense. So they are going to be without their best player, maybe on the entire team, in their linebacker, Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. He's in the transfer portal. He's been a really great player for them this season. They're also going to be without their starting safety, Akili Arnold, and cornerback Jermod McCoy. So even though they're going to be without those 3 guys, they still have plenty of production coming back in this one. At defensive end, they got 2 pretty good pass rushers in Sione Loloahea. He had 39 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, but he did have 32 pressures and 2 forced fumbles this season. And then opposite him is Andrew Chatterfield. He's a 6-year guy. He led the team with 9 sacks and also had 40 pressures. He is a dude who just creates a lot of havoc on the line of scrimmage, so that's going to be a difficult task for Notre Dame starting tackles. He also has 2 interceptions on the year, which is pretty impressive. And for as good as he is at getting after the quarterback, he isn't as great at stopping the run. He only has 27 total tackles on the year, but still, that is a player that Notre Dame is going to have to keep an eye out for on every single play. Also, on the back end of their defense, Ketan Oladapo, he's number 28. He's a good player. He's tied for second on the team in tackles with 62. Also defended 6 passes, had 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Fun fact about him, I actually played blackjack with him at Pac-12 Media Days in Vegas. I don't really have a great scouting report on him as a player, just from the little bit that I've watched of Oregon State this season, but I can tell you that he's a really good blackjack player. And when I went down to the tables once Media Day was all done, it was clear that he had already been at the table for a little while, and he had been having a lot of success. So how does that affect this game? It doesn't, but I felt like throwing that in there. So if you look at Oregon State, what they like to do on defense, they really like to bring pressure. I expect they're going to bring a lot of pressure in this one, considering what Notre Dame is going to have to place on the offensive line. I think they're going to try to get after Steve Angeli as much as possible and force him into mistakes. But if Notre Dame is able to win on early downs, I think they'll be set up for success in this one. But we cannot forget about special teams, even though it looks like some players on Oregon State have forgot about special teams, because they're going to be without their kicker, Atticus Sappington. I had to check 3 times if that's a real name. As it turns out, it is. Atticus Sappington is in the transfer portal. He will not be kicking for the Beavers in this one. And Everett Hayes is his replacement. He actually does have a lot of experience in college, but not a lot of good experience. He's 18 of 31 kicking field goals in his career, so he's not very accurate. They're also breaking in a brand new punter who is going to be making his college debut in this one. And then at returner, I assume that Silas Bolden is going to be handling all of their return duties. He wasn't their primary guy. That was gold, but he's also returned a punt return for a touchdown already this year. That, granted, that was against UC Davis, but still returned it to the house. So he's definitely going to be someone to keep an eye out for. And I just think when you look at special teams as a whole, I think it's going to get tricky in this game. Like, Oregon State has nothing to lose. They've got a wide receivers coach coaching the team. They're without a lot of their best guys. Their future is entirely up in the air. So I imagine they're going to try some weird stuff. They might try a fake punt. They could try a reverse on the kickoff return. Notre Dame's special teams just has to stay disciplined in this one. And I think if they do that, they'll dominate this matchup, and that'll go a long way in helping Notre Dame win this game. But they just really have to stay disciplined, because if you're going to get weird, right, in a game like this, in a bowl game, when you're out in El Paso, and who knows how many people are even going to be watching this game, if you want to take advantage of a team who probably has more talent than you, which I believe Notre Dame has over Oregon State, one way to make up for that is getting weird with some trick plays, and especially on special teams when the opposition is least expecting it. So something to keep an eye out for in this game. All right, coming up next, we'll wrap things up with my keys to the game for Notre Dame and some predictions. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, here are my keys to the game for Notre Dame to win this one. On offense, I think it's imperative that they have success on early downs. They cannot put Steve Angeli in bad situations and 3rd and long, because then the Oregon State defense can just pin their ears back and send the house at him, and that is not going to bode well for the Notre Dame offense. So obviously, if they need to get the run game going, that would go a long way in helping this team get a win. But I also think that Gino Guidugli, in his first game as the play caller for Notre Dame in place of Jared Parker, who just took the job at Troy, if he could get the horizontal passing game going, find the receivers on the outside, get them in open space to make some plays, and basically, on first down, if they can just throw a screen and get 6 yards, that would be great. It isn't something that Notre Dame has done a ton of so far this season, but when you have a quarterback like Steve Angeli making his first career start, I think that giving him some easy throws, especially early in the game, to get him in a rhythm, get things going for the offense, I think would go a long way. Then you could sort of, get it a little bit more aggressive as the game goes on, incorporate some play action, throw the ball downfield a little bit more. That can work later. But early on, Notre Dame needs to have success on first and second down and get Steve Angeli in a rhythm. And I think a great way to do that is by running the ball effectively in between the tackles and then finding the receivers on the outside to make plays. Because even though Notre Dame lost a ton of wide receivers to the transfer portal, and they're adding guys in that'll help the team next year, even though they won't be able to play in this game. They will have Jaden Thomas back. I think that's going to be huge. He looks healthier than I've seen him in weeks based on some of the clips we've seen from him in practice leading up to this game, so that's going to be great. Jaden Greathouse looks healthy as well. We know Jordan Faison can be a really dynamic player when he has the ball in his hands, so I think Notre Dame needs to get the ball to those guys in space and let them make plays. They also have to win the field position battle. I'm not expecting this Notre Dame offense to drive down the field and score a touchdown on every possession or even score a field goal every possession for that matter. They just need to not turn the ball over, which I know is like the most elementary analysis ever whenever you're talking about a football game. Like, yeah, whoever doesn't turn the ball over is probably going to win the game. Yes, we all know that, but it goes beyond that as well, right? Even if Notre Dame isn't scoring all the time, they need to at least get a couple first downs every drive and just keep pushing the ball down the field so that if they have to punt it, or if they go for it, or they try to kick a 75-yard field goal, Spencer Schrader again, like they've tried to do a couple times, as long as the ball is on the Oregon State side of the field, I feel really good about what this Notre Dame defense can do because I think the defense is going to dominate this game. Notre Dame returns every starter on the defensive line. They're going to have J.D. Bertrand and Jack Heiser at linebacker. They have Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts in their secondary. So all of the opt-outs, or at least the most impactful ones in my opinion, are all on offense. And this Notre Dame defense has been one of the best in the country all season long. So if the offense can just play some complementary football and make sure that they're not putting the defense in really bad situations, then I don't really see how Oregon State scores that many points in this game. Now, like I said earlier, these things can get weird. They can get tricky. Steve Angeli is probably going to have at least one turnover, just considering the fact that it is his first start, and he's probably going to be facing a lot of pressure. That's okay as long as those turnovers don't mount up, and then he ends up becoming like Brock Purdy, who ruined my fantasy season. That's a sidebar. We're not going to get into that. But as long as Notre Dame can just win the field position battle and make sure that the defense isn't, stuck in short field situations, I think that Notre Dame should have not necessarily an easy path to victory, but they should be set up for success. Let's put it that way. And the last thing, my last key to the game on defense, they just need to stay disciplined. Like I said, they should dominate this matchup. They have more talent on their defense, especially going up against Oregon State offense. And there's just no reason to believe that Oregon State is going to be able to consistently move the ball in them. So the only thing that can hurt them is big explosive plays, play action bomb where the receiver goes up and makes a play, or if they run some trick plays and have success. Wake Forest, they were completely stagnant on offense, and then they ran a couple trick plays, got things going. That set up a touchdown. Notre Dame ended up dominating Wake Forest because they were the much better team. But when you let up some plays like that, that's how you let an inferior team get back into that game. So Notre Dame's defense just needs to stay disciplined, make sure that they don't give up any big plays, especially if Oregon State tries to do anything crazy like some double reverse pass or something like that. All right, let's get to my predictions now. I think Notre Dame is going to win this one 24-13. I like the Irish to cover, but it looks like an under game all the way. I don't expect a ton from Steve Angeli. Nor do I think Notre Dame is going to ask him to do all that much. They've been a running team all year long, and I expect that to be the same on Saturday, considering this is Angeli's first start, and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are probably just itching to get more carries because they've been sitting behind Wojciak Estime all year long. So I'm sure that Notre Dame is going to try to ground and pound for much of this game, play complementary football. I think when Steve Angeli does drop back and pass, it's going to be a lot of quick passes, a lot of hot routes where he doesn't have to go through his full progressions, and I would love that. I think that'd be a great plan for him to get things going, and then maybe once you get Oregon State's defense to creep up a little bit, then you can try to hit him over the top with a deep ball. Maybe Jaden Greathouse or Jaden Thomas make a play there. But I think Notre Dame can get really creative. Having Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, if they get them both in the backfield at the same time, that'd be a lot of fun. They did that a lot against Ohio State, where they had two running backs back there. Maybe they'll bring that out again to try to get creative here in Gino Guidoli's first and only game as the play caller for the Irish. Then on defense, I think J.D. Bertrand is going to go out on top. I think he's going to have 10-plus tackles in this one. He's going to be all over the field making plays, and there were some rumors that he might opt out of this one. I was really surprised when I heard that he's elected to play, and I just expect a big, big game from him. I also think we're going to see at least one defensive or special teams touchdown in this one from Notre Dame. I think if you were to make a bet on who's going to have a pick for Notre Dame. I think Benjamin Morrison is going to have one. Feels like it's been a while since he's gotten a pick. Xavier Watts seemed to eat all of those up this year, but let's not forget Benjamin Morrison is one of the best cornerbacks in the entire country. He had a nice interception last year in the Gator Bowl. I think he's going to make one. He's going to get one on Friday, I should say, against Oregon State. So just a couple player-specific ones, and I think this is going to be a really weird game, man. It is. The 2010 Sun Bowl against Miami was weird because it was like snowing in El Paso, Texas, which that by itself is weird. And then Harrison Smith had 3 interceptions in that one. And you know what? I'm here for it, right? These bowl games are meant to be entertaining. They're meant to be fun, but they're going to be really competitive. And this game means a lot for the Irish and specifically Marcus Freeman. So I know that he is going to make sure he does everything he can to set up this team to get the win there at the end, where I feel like Oregon State is going to be just playing with nothing to lose, really. This game doesn't really matter to them in the future. They need to figure out their future. So this game might be a nuisance to them. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure that they're going to come in ready to go, but it's going to be a fun one, and I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to talk about it with you in the aftermath. So that is going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I will be back after the Sun Bowl to talk about everything that went down in El Paso, and then it'll be full speed ahead into the offseason. Even though the season is coming to a close, we'll have you covered here with plenty of content throughout the offseason. And if the next few months are anything close to what this past month has been like, I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of things to talk about. Probably going to be doing a lot of like season and review content, some look ahead, and some other ideas that I've been thinking about doing all season long, but really doesn't really make sense when Notre Dame is playing a game every Saturday. Be sure that you're subscribed to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Follow us on X at Locked On Irish, on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal X account, which is at Tyler WOJCIAK. Enjoy the bowl game and go Irish.